Hey everybody, this is Perch. There's a debate. This feels like a dumb debate, or where people argue semantics, but enough of it is true. Like there's a point that's being made. Everybody knows the point, but everybody wants to argue kind of the semantics of it. And the point is basically, you know, is the comics business or comic shops like a restaurant? And I'm seeing a lot of people post the comic business is not like a restaurant. You don't get to just go in and order from the menu. And every now and then, by the way, with politics, you get talking points and you see like this, different people say the exact same phrase like 500 times. And you figure, well, somebody clearly sent out an email saying, work this into your news broadcast, whatever it happens to be. You get these moments where it's just the people are saying the exact same thing. Well, the same thing with this statement. The comic business is not a restaurant. You don't just get to go in and order off a menu. This is being repeated over and over and over by people. And I can't tell if there were talking points distributed in some, Google group or something, most likely, or if people honestly just think this is a good point and are retweeting or copying and pasting it again. But it's a dumb point because first of all, what is it trying to prove? The reason why people are posting this is they're saying, hey, a lot of the criticism about comics are entitled fans saying, you need to write Superman this way and expecting that the comic publishers are going to comply. And first off, that's an extreme take on what's going on. I'm sure there are some people out there, but by and large, you don't have a group of fans or customers out there going, I need Superman to be exactly this way, drawn this way, in this way. You don't have that. What you have is the same thing you've had for decades, which is people saying, I like this creative team. I like this artist. When Chris Claremont and John Byrne were on the X-Men together, a lot of people liked that creative team. Now, behind the scenes, the Chris Claremont and John Byrne pairing was not a happy one. Byrne wasn't happy. Claremont wasn't happy. That the two were not going to work together well. Byrne would go on to do that Fantastic Four run, which was just amazing, and other things. Claremont would, of course, go on to do a long X-Men run, which was also amazing. But the two were not fond of each other. And there were, little scuffles breaking out. I mean, it wasn't a good relationship. It would have turned sour had it continued. But when Byrne left the X-Men, there were a lot of fans who, very much like today, wrote in, complained, and said, why is he put him back on the book? Why I liked him on the book, put him back on the book. And Marvel didn't do that. And instead continued forward. Paul Smith wound up having a good run. John Romita Jr., Mark Silvestri, Jim Lee. You had a number of kind of luminary. Dave Cockrum came back for some issues. I mean, you had some really amazing creators come back on that book, and it worked out. Now, had Marvel put on a bunch of kind of nobodies who couldn't draw and were terrible for the title, it wouldn't have worked out. And then the fans could have said, I told you so. You should have put on Byrne. And, that just would have been the way it worked. But Marvel, went their own direction, both practically because the two creators didn't like each other, but also, they staffed it with strong people and it worked. And so there's not this, there's this statement that gets kind of regurgitated that fans are telling people it has to be prescriptive, it has to be exactly this way. Carol Danvers has to go back to her old costume. Her tits need to be twice as big. It's going to have to be drawn by this person. It's going to have to be written by this person. She's going to need to serve the Avengers sandwiches. Like you're going to have to. And that's, first of all, that's not happening nearly as much as is portrayed. The spirit of what's being asked for is, hey, I want to see, this style of art or this style of storyline or this pricing or whatever it happens to be. That's what people are saying. This basic feeling of the character. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request. Now, once again, the comic publisher can choose to ignore it and, forge their own path. And it's a gamble. It either works or it doesn't. By the same token, the comic publisher can say, all right, we'll do exactly what the fans want. And they could discover that was a bad idea, that what the fans were telling them turned out not to be true. The customers didn't come. I mean, if you talk to some comic editors, they will tell you that a lot of the, X Corp and some of the books, the new X Factor that was part of the Krakoa era was a result of people on Twitter, fans telling them this is exactly what they want, what we want. And you could see, people saying this is the best book, possible out of Marvel. And sure enough, it didn't sell. So, you could give fans what they want to the letter, some fans, but are they the fans that are going to buy the book? Did you pick the right people? I mean, a lot of questions there. This is what being a publisher, it's why it's a, big boy job. You have to go in and you have to make decisions, and the decisions, hopefully you're making intelligent ones. But to the original point, is the comic book, is the LCS or is a comic book business like a restaurant? In the spirit of how that's being discussed, yeah, it actually is very much like that. When a shopper or a potential customer walks into the comic shop and looks at the giant shelf of comics, it's like a menu. They're almost literally looking at a menu, and they're going to pick things off the menu, and they're going to take it to the counter, and they're going to buy it. If they don't see things on the menu they like, they're not going to buy it. It very much is like a restaurant in that regard. And I guess the nuance, if you want to get really picky about it, is, the money's already been given to the publisher at that point because the comic shop is ordered. But if the comic shop notices month after month after month that, one stack of comics just isn't moving, this Thor run, just as an example, I'm not taking a shot at Al Ewing, but, say Thor is not selling and he's ordering, or she is ordering 50 copies every month, the comic shop retailer has a choice, just like the publisher does. Do I want to keep buying things and not selling it, basically, giving Marvel money and, stacking up books for whatever reason? Or do I cut my orders? Well, retailers are going to cut the orders. Much like if you go to a restaurant and there's, 80 things on the menu and nobody ever orders chicken, well, the restaurant stops, getting chicken from its supplier. They call up Tyson Chicken and say, sorry, we don't want chicken here. Or, by the way, if Tyson Chicken decides, hey, we're going to raise the prices of the chicken, so you're going to have to raise the prices on your menu and make it unattractive to buy, that's going to be a problem. Or if they decide to just start like injecting, cayenne pepper and other things into the chicken so it tastes fundamentally different and people don't order it, well, the restaurant will stop carrying it. This analogy holds up pretty true. If the comic publisher does something radically different to the books, the comic shop put them on the shelves. The customer, just like a restaurant, will walk in, look at it, say, I don't care for that, I don't want it, and not buy it, stays on the shelf. Comic shop eventually cuts orders. That's how this business works. The analogy of it's not a menu, it actually exactly is a menu. Now, that doesn't mean that the customer walks in and goes, the only way I'm going to buy Wolverine is if you put him in, the brown costume, and he's going to have the bone claws back, and Joe Matt is going to have to draw it. Until you do that, I'm not going to buy it. Well, okay, but that's no different than a customer, say, walking into a steak restaurant and saying, I want green curry, and until you bring it to me, I'm not going to order anything. That's on the customer. The customer can, basically can either starve or leave, or, the restaurant can say, yeah, it's financially worth it for me to, order one order of green curry every time this guy comes in. There's lots of choices here, but fundamentally, this is a very basic business. And I get that, artists don't like being compared to a restaurant, I guess. But there's nothing inherently bad about that. There's nothing inherently, negative. That's not a slight or an insult. It's just the nature of, we create products. We brought these products out for sale. Customers buy them or don't. Customers have that choice. That's how this business works. So all this, the comic business is not a restaurant. It sit like a menu. It's just a weird statement because I'm not sure what's being proven there. What the person is basically saying is the customer just doesn't get to pick. Well, true, the customer doesn't get to pick the content that's picked upstream at the publisher level, but the customer does get to pick if they order off the menu or not. If the customer doesn't, then, like I said, the comic shop has a choice of either, keep giving, the comic publisher a loan or stop ordering. And then when that happens, comic publisher also has a choice, print stuff that nobody buys and lose money, or, find another channel for it or whatever. I mean, there's again, everybody has choices in this, much like a restaurant and a menu. Crazy thing about this business. Anyway, I don't know. I just find that analogy weirdly baffling. And other than the fact that I think some people view it as disparaging, I don't understand why why the fight against it. It's pretty obvious. And quite frankly, there's some restaurateurs that are pretty respectful for their business. I mean, chef going for a Michelin star for their restaurant doesn't think the restaurant business is crappy. I don't know why, artist making $100 a page is somehow thinking they're, high and mighty above it all. This is all just a business. So anyway, thanks for listening.